Welcome back to the Apartment 6 podcast. I'm Jess.
And I'm Marissa.
And thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. I think we're going to jump right into our roses and thorns to start off the episode. So, Jess, what was your rose this week?
My rose was that last week we talked about my Nana on the podcast. I talked about her passing and how that impacted me. And Marissa had asked me if there was anything that reminded me of her in everyday life, or if I ever felt her presence around me. And at the time I sort of was like, oh, I don't know. The color green and my mom and things like that. But I went for a long walk this week and I was thinking about it, and I realized that there are tons of things that remind me of her, and I wanted to share a few. So when I think of her, she was a summer baby. So just warm weather makes me think of her.
When was her birthday?
August 24th.
Oh.
So just warm weather makes me think of her, and also because that brings baseball season, and she was the biggest Red Sox fan alive. She knew all of the games. Or when all the games were, I mean. And
Sports be like.
Yeah, I thought about how for a brief period of time before she passed, she was in a nursing home for just to get her back on her feet, kind of literally, before she came back to our house. And I remember that they asked her, Janet, do you know your age? And she would be like, yeah, I'm 78. And they'd be like, okay, do you know what year you were born? She'd really think about it, and she'd be like, 19.
I know where this is going.
Yeah, she'd be like 1934. And they'd be like, yep, good, whatever. And she'd be taking her time with all the answers. And then they'd be like, do you know who's president? And she would go, Obama.
Oh, you've told me this.
And say it so happily. And so I love Obama for that reason, because she did. I mean, obviously, I like him anyway, but that makes me really happy that the last president who was president when she was alive was Obama. And the other thing I was thinking of when I was going for a walk was the song Smooth by Carlos Santana. She loved that song, and she used to purse her lips and be like, 'cause you're so smooth. And she also really liked the song Maria by Carlos Santana. And so I was listening to those on my walk, and it's so funny. I have a playlist of songs that remind me of my mom, and those are two songs that I added to that playlist that day because I was like, oh my gosh, my mom used to play these in the car. And I was listening to those, and it was on shuffle. And this playlist is over 2 hours long. The second those songs finished, It's Not Unusual by Tom Jones came on, and that's what I sang to her on her deathbed. And it was it came on, and I was walking, and this cherry blossom tree just let out on me. And it was this weird moment where I was like, yeah, she's here. Because the fact that I listened to those two songs back to back, and then of all the songs in that playlist, that is what came on. So that was my thorn of the week, is just taking some time to remember her.
Your rose?
Oh, my rose. I'm sorry. Yes. My rose of the week, my bad. It was just taking time to remember her and really feeling her this week, and having our last episode be a reminder of all the things in life that actually do make me think of her, that maybe I forget I even assigned to her.
Yeah.
So that was my rose. What about you?
My rose happened last night when we went to go get frozen custard together. There's a place that when we've gone on drives to certain places, when we took an Uber to the mall one time, or when we drove with a friend to Target, I distinctly remember seeing this frozen custard place. And you also had it in the back of your mind this whole time too, that it was something you wanted to try eventually. And it was such a hot day yesterday. It was really warm and very summery. And it was essentially just a perfect ice cream night. And we got ice cream. And the reason it's my rose is because it made me feel the most normal that I felt this entire time of self-isolation. Like I think that that is something that we would have done during normal times. So it made me feel like times were more normal. So I was like, things can't be too bad if it's hot and we're getting ice cream at night.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just said, yeah, no. You guys, I do this thing where I keep saying, yeah, no, totally on the podcast. And it's like the stupidest thing I could say because it's just like a contradiction and then being like totally at the end. So, yes, I feel that. I love getting ice cream in the summer. And I love it when it's like a last minute, like, hey, want to go get ice cream after dinner tonight as like a treat thing. So it was so nice. And
Yeah.
it was like a good little walk. Like it takes like 15 minutes to walk there. So it's like perfect amount of time. And we chatted.
Yeah, and it was just such a good way to occupy that period of time. Like I feel like both of us, when we finish a work day, we don't necessarily know what to do with ourselves after. And it's like sometimes we can like go for a walk or watch TV or whatever, but that was the first time that we actually like did an activity at night. So it just, yeah, it was fun and it took up some time and it made me feel like everything was a little more okay.
Yeah, I even said to you when we were coming up the stairs into our apartment last night, I was like, well, that killed like a good hour. Now we only have forever to go.
I know.
Because that's what quarantine feels like.
I know.
But
yeah, it was really nice. What was your thorn of the week?
so my thorn of the week was that when Marissa broke a glass last week, she put it in the trash and I took out the trash this week and it cut me. The trash cut me, but like it sliced through my leggings and into my leg. And then I was like, wait, this is a dirty piece of glass. Like that's concerning. And so I bandaged it up and whatever, it's fine. I cleaned it out. And then later that day, my mom texted me and was like, oh, I'm at urgent care with your brother because he punctured his hand with a nail. My brother's doing some work on my mom's house in New Hampshire. And I guess he was taking shingles off their roof. And one fell down with like the nail up and it like just landed in his hand. Like it poked a hole in his hand. And it's like an old rusty nail. So they had to go to urgent care and he had to get a tetanus shot. And I thought that was so weird that we both like cut ourselves on dirty materials. Yeah, it was weird. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but I guess honestly it was a pretty fine week. So like that's my thorn. What about you?
My thorn is kind of like difficult to explain because it's more of a feeling than an event. But I went on this lovely 2-week work trip, the first 2 weeks of March, and I was staying in New Jersey but it was right on the Hudson. So it was very easy to get into New York whenever I wanted, and I had some really nice bonding time with my coworkers, which is something I really did not expect. And I just I feel like I lived in a bubble during that time because my company was paying for my meals. So I just felt like I wasn't worried about anything. Like during that 2 weeks, everything was easy to me. And then I left that 2 weeks to this. So it was just it was really surreal feeling because it wasn't like I went on this work trip and it was fun and then I went back to normal life and then a couple weeks after I went back to normal, we had to go into quarantine. It was I left my normal for 2 weeks and then when I came back to my home, it didn't feel normal. So the whole thing feels very weirdly surreal to me, and this is why I'm I can't explain it because it's just a feeling I have. But I feel like this week I felt especially nostalgic for, I guess not specifically that trip, but more just how happy and how light and how easy I felt during that time. And I think that what's tough about feeling nostalgic during a time like this is that you can't do anything about it. Like if I really had fun in New York and I had things I wanted to go back and do. If it was normal times, I could have been like, well, I can start planning a trip for sometime in the summer and then that's what I'll look forward to. But now I'm just kind of like, what do I do with this feeling? Like, I just kind of have to sit here with it. So yeah, I've been
scroll back through your feed.
Yeah, I've just been so nostalgic, like this week especially. But yeah, I'm grateful to have had something to feel nostalgic for. So that's good.
And to have gotten out of New York safely.
Yeah, I think that's maybe what feels especially surreal about it is just how strange the timing was. Because I feel like I got home the last possible day I could have normally.
Yeah.
Like if I had been staying there for another week, or if it was, a week later, or even like a few days later, it would have been harder for me to get home. It would have been more nerve-wracking for me to get home. But I like managed to slide back home exactly when it was like less stressful.
Yeah.
So it just like everything was too perfect. Like it just like worked out too well, and that's why I feel so like strange about it. I'm like, did it even actually happen? Like it feels too good to be true.
Yeah, the Friday you came back to Massachusetts was what I also remember as being like the last normal day.
Yeah.
Before like my anxiety really kicked in that Saturday, the like going to the grocery store and feeling afraid kicked in that Saturday. Like everything kicked in the next day for me.
Yeah, and I think either that Saturday or Sunday was when the governor did the first real like press conference about like what was going to happen. It was the first time that I think he said that was when gatherings were going to be limited to like 150 people or something. Like it was the first weekend that he set a standard for that kind of stuff. So it quite literally was when things stopped being normal.
Yeah, I mean earlier that week I had been going to work physically. I was babysitting. I was, doing the whole shebang. And then the next week, like that was the week that I got word like you're gonna be working from home. So like you came home on a Friday and like I haven't been to work since that.
Yeah.
Neither of you.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah, really weird.
So I'll bring us into our next segment. So we are introducing a new segment this week. And I know that we talked about in the first episode how this podcast was inspired by the fact that Marissa and I sent voice memos to each other for like the year after we graduated. And we still do sometimes if we're not living in the same apartment at the same time.
Yeah, for example, we sent voice memos to each other while I was on the trip I was just talking about.
Right. And then I was on a work trip back in January and we sent them. And so we've decided that we're going to play you a clip from one of our voice memos each week. And we're surprising each other. So like I picked out one where Marissa's talking and she hasn't heard it yet. And she's going to respond.
I'm so nervous.
Yeah. She's going to tell us like what was going on inside that time in her life, what was going on in the voice memo, and then she'll surprise me with something of me talking. So we're gonna play our first voice memo clip.
Oh my god. Everybody stay calm.
I'm pulling it up.
Jessica. I can officially say that I have, for the first time, gone on a really, really good first date that I'm comfortable calling a date. Holy crap, Jess. That was like, I am so happy with how that went. I'm like trying not to like be too excited right now.
You don't sound excited at all.
As I'm driving out of the parking lot, just because I know he's somewhere
Market basket parking
and I don't
lot.
want him to like see like how freaking out my face is, but like if you could see me, I'm just like smiling so big. Wow, Jess,
So big.
Okay.
Oh God. I'm
I'm so embarrassed by that.
Don't be. Okay, so tell us what was going on in that voice memo. Do you remember?
Yes. So I had gone on a first date with the guy who would turn out to be my first ever real boyfriend. And we had gone on a date at Patriot Place, which is Gillette Stadium with Pat's Play. And after our date, I was living in my childhood home at the time for a year post-grad. So I didn't want to, my parents knew that I was going on a date, but I've never been the most comfortable talking about that kind of stuff with them. So I didn't want to go all the way home and then record a voice memo for you and have them hear me like that, what you just heard. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pull into a parking lot and record the voice memo there so I can like really just like let it out and then go home and give like a more composed version of myself. So that's exactly what that was. I pulled into the Market Basket parking lot and I let it rip. And that was like pure adrenaline.
Do you remember that feeling?
Yeah. And I think the reason I feel embarrassed is because like it's a type of joy that's so like, this is a weird word choice, but like it's so like naked.
Yeah.
Like it's like complete, just like I wasn't thinking about anything else. I wasn't stressed about anything else. Like that was the only thing on my mind. And I was so happy about it. It was like being high or something.
Love will do it to you.
I mean, was it love? I don't know. But yeah, I really, really remember exactly what was like in my head before I recorded that and while I was recording that. Like I really vividly remember being in that place.
In the voice memo, you say, this is the first guy who I've gone on a date with. You said something like, this is the first guy I've gone on a date with who
I know it's for sure a real date. Something like that.
Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah. So until that point, all I had really had in like late high school and then some in college was these like, just like casual things with guys that I would like meet on dating apps. And it would never be clear to me if they had any intention of it leading anywhere. Like I never ever was in a situation before that where like the guy called it a date basically. Like even if I had gone on dates before that and just not known what they were, that for me was the first time that like I went into it knowing exactly what it was and what I hoped to get out of it and what he hoped to get out of it. Yeah, and I'm in looking back, I'm glad that I was able to have that feeling, even though I'm not with that person anymore.
You also, so I picked that 1 minute portion, but after that, you go on to tell me a million times how cute he is.
Oh my God.
You go on to explain exactly why you think he's so cute. You say things like, the height, the hair, you like tell me in explicit detail. And it's so funny. I was like, it's just, yeah, it was very sweet. You were pure adrenaline in that voicemail.
Yes, pure adrenaline and like shock too. I think that's probably why I kept repeating that he was cute, because like, I don't think I would have expected that I would like get everything I wanted. Like that I was attracted to him, that we had a great conversation, that I felt good about it, and that I knew it was a date.
Yeah.
Like I think I was just so shocked that all of those pieces fell into place because they never had for me.
Yeah. Yeah, you say that. You later in the voicemail talk about, this is one of the first times that I feel like I'm really attracted to someone and I'm like surprised that they're attracted to me back, which makes me sad that you think that of yourself, because I don't think you see how beautiful you are. But
Jessica!
I think what you said, it just, all of that to me is just saying how surprised you were by this person. And I think that all of that also plays into why you ended up with this person. I think that they were one of the first people to make you feel like really special and who made you really excited about the idea of being in a relationship.
Yeah.
And it went on to be your first relationship. And this is a great segue because
Yep.
in this episode, we're going to be talking about our first relationships and what we learned from them and how we ended up in them and everything. So yeah, I thought that would be a good voice memo for this episode to share.
Yes.
Any last thoughts on the voice memo though?
Not specifically. Like we'll talk because this is our topic. Like I'll probably be thinking about that because it was literally in relation to my first relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think just the biggest thing that I get out of that is just that like that's what I sound like when I'm like the happiest.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's sweet.
Yeah.
So, first relationships.
Yep.
So we'll start off by saying that neither one of us ever had a relationship in high school or before that.
Yeah.
Unless you count the 24 hours that I dated someone in middle school.
True.
But I don't count it. So
Unless you count my imagination relationship with Brendan Urie of Panic at the Disco.
oh my gosh. Unless you count you smooching someone in
Oh
your
my
backyard growing up.
I feel like that would be like a funny podcast episode at some point to like actually just pick out individual stories that we think are funny. But yeah, I told Jess a story last night about my first kiss.
Yeah, she was young and she was smooching on a little neighborhood boy.
Ah, yes. I feel like I have this assumption that like us not having had relationships in high school is this really unique thing. And I do have to wonder if that's actually true or if it just felt that way because we were on the outside. Like in my head, if I had to like make up a statistic, I would probably say like 75% of people in high school have relationships. Like in my mind,
So random.
it's like most people have boyfriends in high school. But like I don't know if that's actually true or if it just felt that way to me.
Yeah, I would say that a lot. I didn't even have anything in high school. Well, that's not true. I guess that's not true. I never came close to a relationship. I went on, I think, a single date, and then the guy ghosted me, and then we ended up in the same history class the next year. Love that for me. I also, I was like talking to this guy here and talking to this guy there. And I was always dating the best friend of my best friend's boyfriend so I got like the less hot version, not like physically, but literally like the I got like the sidekick to whoever my best friend was actually
because
dating.
you were the sidekick too.
Yeah, because I was the sidekick.
Yeah.
I was never the starring role of my love
Always
story.
the bridesmaid, never a bride.
Yeah, I'm thinking of that Marina and the Diamond song. It's like it almost feels like a joke to play the starring. Wait, what? I don't know. Now I forget the song. If you know the song, go listen to the song. I don't know.
If you know the song that we don't know, then go listen to it.
It almost feels like a joke to play the part when I'm not the starring role in your heart. That's not it. But that's something. That's the sentiment of it. And I feel like that was me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never had a relationship in high school. I was a late bloomer on all accounts, really. I think, and I explained this to Marissa as I sort of felt like I was one of those people who was easily forgotten about. Not to say that like, oh, if people had just remembered me, they would have loved me. But to be like, I just feel like I really flew under the radar all through school. Like I feel like I wasn't super polarizing to anyone. If you knew me, you knew me. You may have liked me, may not have. Probably didn't really think much of me. Like I just was one of those middle of the road people. I kind of like, I wasn't super popular, super great at sports. I wasn't super great at this. I was not, I just feel like I was so normal and so average. Yeah. And all of those average people in the middle, we all just kind of like already knew each other. And we were like, I don't want to date you. Or at least that was my experience.
Yeah, well, I felt the exact same way in high school, that like I wasn't on either sort of end of the coolness spectrum. Like I wasn't the lowest and I was by no means the highest. But I feel like, and we were saying this last night, and I hope this isn't like offensive to anyone, but we were saying that the people who were quote unquote less cool all dated each other, and the people who were quote unquote cool also dated each other, but we were neither of those groups of people. We just kind of sat in the middle. And I think
I feel like that is offensive, but sorry.
Well, I think, yeah.
You know what we're talking, if you're listening to this podcast, you were probably those people. So like,
if you relate to us, you were also in the middle. No, but I think in some ways, like it made more sense even to be in either group, because like you had people who clearly had like shared interests with you, whether it was like, you know, art club or sports. Whereas like if you were in the middle, the only thing you had in common with each other was that you were in the middle.
Yeah, at least like this was definitely my experience in my school. Like everyone who was like quote unquote popular played a sport and like was good at a sport.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty universal high school experience.
Yeah, I mean, especially like when you go to a school that values sports and puts their money in sports, like that's what you get.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, so it didn't feel very easy, I think, for either of us to find people to date in high school. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm a cheerleader and this guy's a football player, so I'm always at his games. So we always talk to each other at the football games.
No, it's more like I play singer number 1 in the musical and you are in my algebra class.
Yeah.
How are we going to find time to make out? Like it wasn't, yeah, do you remember like the first person you were interested in high school?
I was interested in the same person throughout high school. So I had it was a common denominator the whole time, but there were points in high school that I like spiked interest in different people, but no matter what, I always had a crush on the same person the whole entire time.
Oh, that's like kind of nice though, because it like gives you something. It's like exciting a little bit, but it's like
that's true. I had we don't know how much to say, but we took Portuguese class together, and that class was like the same kids every year. So it was like all 4 years of high school, I had at least that class with him. So I think that's part of why that crush lasted throughout high school, because I was like, no matter what, I'm going to see him in this class.
Right. Can you confirm or deny if this was the Green Day kid from episode 2?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay, but we moved on.
But actually, you know what's funny? That kid was also in my Portuguese class.
Oh, you just moved on from him.
I really did. I slid right past him. I was like, you don't appreciate my Green Day riffs? Then
wow,
you can't have me.
That's some tea.
Yeah, but I think that maybe having a crush on the same person throughout all of high school that didn't like you back could be considered a hindrance to having relationships in high school. Like, because I'm just, every time I think about it and
weren't emotionally available.
Yeah, maybe. Like, every time I think about how long it took me to get into a relationship, I just try my best to, like, figure out why. I'm like, was something wrong with me? Was I just, like, not good enough in these boys' eyes or whatever? I'm like, was I putting off a vibe that, like, made me less available to people? Like, I have no idea. But like that could be a reason, just the fact that like the whole time I was pining after someone who wasn't interested in me. And I remember it making me really sad. So I was like, I liked the same person the whole time who didn't like me back, and B, I was sad about it. So I was like angsty and mopey, and like, who wants to date that?
Okay, then you have your reason.
So maybe that's at least a reason.
Emotionally unavailable, mopey, and sad.
And angsty.
And angsty. I didn't, like, looking back, legitimately like anyone
Wow.
Like I never had like my first real crush. Okay, hold on. There have been people when I was like young that I maybe had like a crush on, or I would decide like I have a crush on this person. But the first time that I really felt feelings for someone, I was 13. Again, it ended in a 24-hour relationship. And if my friends from home are listening to this, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And I hope you're cracking up that I'm bringing this up, because every once in a while I'll just be like, remember when so-and-so asked me out and dumped me in 24 hours? Because it's just funny to me. Because I have obviously no ill will towards that person, but at the time I was like writing songs in my bedroom about it. So another thing you and I have in common.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that was the first time I really liked someone. I have to say that I never felt that again in high school. Like I was dating like the best friend's boyfriend's best friend, and I remember having feelings and getting butterflies, but like I didn't, when I look at who they were as people, I wouldn't like them. But like when I had feelings for that other person when I was in 7th grade, I legitimately liked them as a person. Like we were really good friends. He used to ask me to sing for him, which,
Oh damn.
you know what that's like when you if you're a singer and a boy is like, will you sing for me, you're like swoon. I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is, yeah, I feel like I didn't really have those kinds of feelings for anyone all through high school. I like had people I maybe was interested in, but I didn't legitimately like. I wanted to like someone because that would be more interesting. But
I was literally just going to ask you that. Like, if you were given the choice, would you prefer to not have like a long-standing crush like I did, or to have a crush like I did the whole time but have it be unrequited?
oh my gosh, that's so hard. I guess like I think having a crush is fun, but I'm the type of person who I'll tell you if I like you. So like, did you tell him and he was like, I don't like you, or you just never did anything about it? Because you can't necessarily say it's unrequited if you just never did anything.
I did my version of doing things about it, which I think we both know is very minuscule, because in my head, I think that I'm getting across exactly what I want to say when I do very small, like passive aggressive things.
I think I would have liked to have a crush, because I think it would have made something at least more interesting, and at least then I wouldn't have just been like liking people just out of convenience.
Yeah.
But
I am someone who, like, it's very easy for me to have a crush.
it's pretty hard for me to have a crush.
Yeah, that's interesting.
To really feel something for someone is pretty hard for me. I mean, not hard, like if I like you, I like you, but like I just, you know, with that guy in 7th grade, what was interesting about that was that we became friends first.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, I wonder if that's what makes me like people. It's like I have to become friends with them first and get to know them. And then if I happen to be like attracted to them, or happen to, you know, just have feelings for them, that just sort of comes later. But my problem also was that I never had any guy friends.
Yeah.
And occasionally I would get guy friends, and then they would sort of fall out. Like I've never been able to successfully keep male friends in my life.
But I think that the way that you just described that is like a good way to protect yourself from getting hurt, because like at least, not that it always prevents you from getting hurt, but like at least you know that if you do get to the point of having a crush on someone, you've gotten to know them and they're a nice person. Whereas like I just make a lot of assumptions. Like I will just like meet someone and think they're cute and be like, oh my God, I love them. Like I don't need like proof that they're like, that we get along or that they're nice. Like I just assume that all those things are true just because I think they're cute. Maybe that's like vain of me. I don't know.
That's interesting. I have had stronger feelings for TV show characters than I have for any of the men in my high school. I will tell you that right now.
That's funny.
High school was just I was just floating around. I really didn't have anything going on that was substantial.
Well, so then we got to college.
Oh yeah. Okay. So back to our first relationships, rather than we're only focusing on the lack thereof.
Yeah.
But yeah, at some point that all changed for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it happened when I was 19, at the end of my freshman year of college.
And give us a little quick synopsis of how you met.
So we lived in the same residence? Dorm building. We lived in the same dorm building. And so that's what we told people. Like, it's if his parents asked or my parents asked, it was we met at college. If someone from college asked, it was we met at the same dorm building. If a real friend asked, it was we met on Tinder.
I love that.
And yeah, so we met on Tinder. Of course, we matched because, again, we were in the same dorm building. So that made sense how we were buzzing on top of each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we met and we talked for, I don't know, maybe a few weeks. He asked me on a date. We went on a date at the end of the school year and then went on a few more dates and hung out for the last, we only had 3 weeks left in the school year.
Calling back to the voice memo, when you went on your first date with him, were you sure that it was a date? Like, was it like we are going on a date?
Yes, especially because we weren't friends before. The only reason we would be getting together and going to dinner, because we were going to dinner. It wasn't like I get what you're saying now. At first I was like, well, we weren't trying to be friends, but I get what you're saying. We're not. No, we weren't hooking up. We were. So my mind is so innocent. I'm like, no. We weren't gonna just be pals. Yeah. We were going to dinner, so I knew, and I think he even said something, he used the word date. He was very upfront about that stuff, which I really appreciated. He always was like, I like you, or I want to go on a date, or I have feelings about this. He was very upfront about how he felt about me and what our intent. We were both very upfront with what our intentions were with each other. And we decided to not make things official because we'd only been seeing each other for 3 weeks. And then we were going home for the summer, which was going to be long distance for us. And so we didn't. And then we just kept in communication over the summer. We were we'll just see each other when we get back to school. But, we kept texting instead, and we would FaceTime. And then he decided to fly to Massachusetts to visit me over the summer.
He done did it.
So that's how he met my parents, was just coming to stay with us.
Do you remember how that felt? Because that's kind of interesting. Not only was he meeting your parents at dinner or something like that, but he was actually coming to stay.
Yeah, it was so interesting because I had only known him in person for 3 weeks. He came in July. So at this point, we had been talking for 2 months before he came to visit. But yeah, I mean, I was pretty sure it was my first. We were talking we were in a relationship, but we just technically weren't calling it that because it felt easier to have that degree of separation. And we were both having really busy summers. So, I mean, it felt definitely nerve-wracking. I remember cleaning my house like a mad woman before his flight was landing and feeling anxious that morning. And yeah, it was kind of funny. And my parents bought a pull-out twin bed for him.
Yep.
I was like, okay.
Which then came in handy later in our college experiences when friends came to stay.
Yeah, I ended up bringing it to the dorms and people would just stay. Where is that? Oh, you know what? It's actually what I slept on for Christmas this year. Technically, my mom doesn't have a bed for me in my room. It's really comfortable. I forgot that was a pull-up because she put a twin mattress on top of it and made it a real bed. But anyway, so that thing is still coming in handy. It felt scary, especially because we had been a little bit rocky before he came to visit. I don't know if you remember this. I don't know if I told you this at the time, but maybe afterward. We were a bit rocky before he came to visit, but having him here restored everything. And yeah, I mean, I felt great.
I think that's pretty unique.
I was living.
To date someone for a few weeks and then have to move away from each other. And then A, the first time you see each other in person again in a few months, and B, the first time that he's meeting your parents, he's coming to stay overnight in your house.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. I've never thought about how you kind of went from one extreme to another.
Yeah, I mean, it was our normal, but when I think back to it, it is weird. Like it is sort of, it was intense. And I mean, I give him credit for doing that, for wanting to, for being willing to like go to this woman's house, my
This
house.
woman.
I'm referring to myself as this woman. I was a 19-year-old college kid, but like just being willing to be like, yeah, I'm gonna fly up to Massachusetts and stay with you and your family. Like, like the fact that he was like willing to do that, because I wasn't willing to do it on the other end.
I think it's just an even more extreme version of like how good it feels to know someone's intentions.
Mm-hmm.
Like from the first date, like you already did feel like you knew his intentions from that point. But like if you didn't, then I think you would especially know if he wanted to fly out to see you that his intentions were like pretty serious and good. So I think that's like a comforting feeling when you like someone.
Yeah.
And they're giving you that validation.
Yeah, like when people asked me, like my friends from home, you know, being like, oh, like are you guys like dating? I'd be like, well, he's flying here in a month, so.
Did any of your friends from home meet him when he was? Oh,
I think he met all of my friends, if I remember it right, because he, of course, he then visited a few more times, not in that summer, but like throughout our relationship. I believe we all mini golfed and got ice cream together.
I did not know that. That's so cute, though. It's very like suburban.
Yeah, I don't quite remember if I know that happened, but I'm like, was that time? We had a great time. I think he was here for like 4 days, and each day we did something different and went all around, and we had dinner with my family at I think we went to Bertucci's the night.
Something in me knew you were gonna say Bertucci's.
Yeah, you know it.
I felt it in my bones.
I think we went to Bertucci's the night that he flew in, and so like that was like, instead of just like showing up to my house and being like hello, I met him at the airport. We like hung around town, and then we met my parents and my brother at Bertucci's, and yeah. It was a time. It definitely, like, having someone meet my family now would definitely look different, because my family's different. Yeah. My parents are now divorced. We don't have that house anymore, so it's a different vibe.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that all happened when it did, because yeah.
Totally. Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, and then we went on to date for 3.5 years, and that was my first relationship. Do you want to tell us about yours?
Yeah, so mine didn't happen until after college, and I remember feeling really frustrated by that, because it was like I moved home we both did a year post grad, just living at home after college, to save that money
so that we could buy apartment 6. Just kidding. We're only
renting.
We're just mere renters.
Yeah, so I was living at home, and then I remember this is actually kind of funny, because I always found it really annoying when people would be like, it'll come when you least expect it. It'll come when you're not thinking about it.
But it does.
Yeah, and it did.
It does, because that's sort of what happened to me. Like,
yeah.
I finally like cut things off with this toxic guy I was talking to. Mm-hmm. And just was like, whatever, I'm now only on the apps for fun. This is all bullshit anyway. Yeah. And then boom.
Yeah. So like I was living at home, and I remember being cognizant of how difficult it would be to be in a relationship during that time, because I am not comfortable at all talking to my parents about romantic things. Even like it's pretty much a given that I wouldn't be with my dad, because we just have a very like, we only talk about jokes. Like, we don't have like a serious relationship. But my mom and I have like a really, and the Patriots. My mom and I have like a really close and serious relationship. So like, knowing that about me, you would.
The best. What? You describing your relationship with your mom is, we have a serious relationship. It's like, yeah, she only birthed you.
It's the most long-term relationship in my whole life. I mean?
Like when people are like, oh, I'm in like a serious relationship right now, and you're like, yes, me and my mom
with my mom,
serious relationship.
Yeah, but we're just like super close, and I think that like people who, if I told someone I was really close with my mom, I think they would expect that we could talk about this kind of stuff together, but we really can't. Like, it just makes us both uncomfortable. So I knew that during this time that, like, I didn't really even want to be dating someone. Like, I didn't want to have to deal with the awkwardness of telling my parents I was going on a date, or God forbid if I wanted to stay over, like what that conversation would be like with my parents. I just like knew how frustrating that would be for me and wanted to avoid it. But at the same time, I was on the apps because I like attention. So, or like that kind of attention specifically. But, and I just like, I'm someone who needs a crush at all times.
Yeah.
Like if I don't have someone that I'm at least like talking to some degree, I'm like really bored. I'm like, I need to have a crush.
Yeah, I love that. I love that about you. I think that's so funny that you're like, I just need to have a crush on someone. Like it doesn't have to be like super serious. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I really like them or we're going on dates. It's like, I just need someone that I think that I like fancy.
I need to have someone to think about, to like daydream about. It's funny because people talk about it in terms of people who date a lot of people in a row, like people who haven't been single in a long time and are like, what do they call it, serial monogamous or something like that?
Yeah, or serial daters.
Yeah, but I feel like I'm just like a serial crusher.
That's so funny because if I don't have anyone to fantasize about in real life, I just fantasize about Derek Shepherd.
I feel like I feel like that's a way that we're different. I think
you didn't even laugh at that. You didn't even blink.
Yeah, because it's something I've known about you.
Because it's too true.
Yeah. I just like accept that about you. But I think that it's like I'm a little more like grounded in that type of way. Like I can't really daydream. Like you've told me that when you hear songs, you like daydream with the lyrics and like picture the situation and like can daydream about like imaginary things. But for some reason I can't.
Yeah, it's weird because I think of myself as having a really shitty imagination. I've always said that because I never liked like fantasy books and like couldn't get into Harry Potter to save my life. But I actually realized in the last year that I'm such a daydreamer.
Yeah. And I'm a daydreamer too, but it has to be about things like in my reality. Like I can't be satisfied with like having a crush on a TV show. I think that's the difference. That's why I need to have a crush on someone who's real in my life. Not that Derek Shepherd isn't real to you. I know he's real to you.
That's what I was just going to say. I was like, what are you saying though?
Anyway,
Massachusetts native.
That's, oh my God. That's why I was on the apps, because I need to have a crush. So I ended up matching with this guy on Bumble, and we, as I said before, had our first date at Patriot Place, and you heard exactly how I felt after that date, which was very happy. So obviously the same was true for me, that like I went into that date knowing exactly what it was and what I hoped for it to be. And for the first time, it actually did become what I hoped it to be. And we dated for, I know that we only like really dated for maybe like 3 or 4 months, but I think when you count like the dating period like before the relationship, it was more like 5 to 6, because we went on dates that were definitely dates, but we weren't like in a relationship yet.
Yeah.
But I would say in general the whole ordeal was like about 6 months, so much shorter than yours. And we also, I just felt like I didn't really get to even, it's a weird word choice, but I didn't even get to like bond with him that much because of living at home. So like I would only see him like once a week, if that, sometimes every other week. And it would have to be this whole ordeal where like, because he lived north of Boston and I lived south of Boston. So we would need to like coordinate how to get to each other, and it was a whole thing. It was very different than like your first relationship, which was like, it was a lot easier for you guys to see each other.
Yeah. At one point we literally lived on the same floor.
Yeah.
The same dorm.
Yeah.
Hall.
Yeah. So that was a huge difference, but yeah, it was a nice little first relationship. I didn't leave it feeling like I was changed really. Like I don't think I like fell for him or like felt any feelings of love or anything like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say you didn't fall in love, but like, what
No.
did you? What would you say you learned from that relationship?
I learned that I could be in one.
That was big for you because I feel like for
Yeah.
a long time you just were like, well, this is just how it is. Like, I can't imagine myself in a relationship. I can't imagine what it would be like to just like be with like have another person be like your automatic go-to.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's kind of like it was a role that I didn't know how to play and didn't know if I could play.
Mm-hmm.
Like being someone's girlfriend. Like I was like, I don't know if I will ever do that or if I can, because I just never experienced it and never like came close to it either. So I think, yeah, the biggest thing I got out of that was like I could play that role. So now I'm like, I'm not broken, like I can do it again. But I just hope that next time I feel more for the person.
Do you feel like the feelings that you expressed in that voice memo are like what clouded your judgment about the relation? Like, do you feel like it wasn't the right person, but that you were so excited about the fact that you thought they were cute, you thought that you know, had things in common, you thought that you had good banter, as they say, and so you just were like, well, this is it, like now I just have to do this? Or do you feel like it was like genuinely like a good, like it was like a good person, good timing, but it just fell flat in the end?
I think that I'll never know the answer to whether or not it was the person, because I did like him. Like I was attracted to him. We were able to have good conversations. I know for sure that the answer to the timing thing is that it was bad timing.
Yeah.
Because like, as I said, I didn't think that a relationship would work well during that time, and that proved to be true. So looking back, I do wish that I would have known what it maybe felt like during good timing, because then I would be able to give a more concrete answer about if it was the person.
Yeah.
But I think that that's really the most difficult thing about your first relationship, is that you have nothing to compare it to.
Yeah. Comparison was a really hard thing in my first relationship. It still is a hard thing for me because my like anxiety brain just goes off and worries about all different kinds of things. And I constantly find myself comparing not necessarily the people, but just how I felt then versus how I feel now versus how I could feel versus how I should feel versus, and I just, yeah, I mean, comparison played a huge role in all of my relationships that I've
Yeah, it's pretty insightful that like you even feel that way now, because I always kind of felt like I wouldn't know what to compare my first relationship to because I didn't have one, so I just had no basis for it. But I kind of think I thought a little naively, like once I do have my first relationship, then I'll know exactly how it should be, and I won't have to have doubts about if what I'm feeling is like good or if the relationship is good. Like obviously people feel that way about any relationship they're in, and that's kind of like an interesting lesson to learn, because I put so much weight on getting into my first relationship.
You did, yeah.
I was like, this is gonna fix everything.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, this is like a weird callback to a previous episode, but it's kind of how people envision weight sometimes. Like they think if they have like an ideal weight or an ideal way they want their body to look, often I've heard people say that they reach that point and then they still don't feel the way they thought they would.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of similar to me in my first relationship.
Yeah.
Like I always thought that once I finally reached that goal, I would feel much better about like myself and about relationships in general. And I didn't. And I think you didn't either, because no one does.
Yeah, well, every relationship is so different. Even if like you have a common denominator, aka like you're the person in it, like
Yeah.
even your relationships are going to be so different. And that's something that I have to remind myself all the time. It doesn't necessarily keep me from comparing, but it keeps me from putting so much weight on the comparisons that I'm making.
Yeah.
But yeah, trying to like give benchmarks to one relationship and then compare those benchmarks to another, or yeah, like every relationship is just so different.
Yeah, and when you really start to like spiral and think a little too much about it, it's like it's impossible to even like empirically know if what you're feeling is what you're labeling it. Like even if people say they're in love, it's possible that like they're not. It's kind of like how people say that our eyes can see different versions of the same color. Like blue to you might look different than blue to me.
Mm-hmm. We often actually have that exact problem.
Oh. Yeah, well, I think I'm like low-key a tiny bit colorblind. Tiny bit.
Anytime she points to something, she's like, this is teal. And I'm like, Marissa, that is straight up green.
Yeah. But see, that's what I mean. Like in your head, you think that you're seeing something a certain way. So maybe you tend to assume that everyone else sees it that way too. And I think that that's kind of true of like being in love and these like benchmarks that you mentioned in relationships. Like they can look and feel different to every single person. So there's no way to like check a box and be like, yes, without a shadow of a doubt, this is love, because it's not like a physical thing.
Right. And even like you and I have talked about the fact that your definition or how you feel things will also be different over time, because, and my mom has said this to me too. She said like the person who I would have married at 19 was different than the person who I would have married at 25, which is different from the person that I would have married at 35, which is, I don't know why I started with 19. I think because she met my dad when she was 19. And so that's what I was thinking.
Well, you had your first relationship at 19.
Whoa, that's crazy. I've never
Did I just blow your mind?
Isn't that funny? She met my dad when she was 19 and I met my ex when I didn't get married. My mom has said that to me before, like who you would marry. It doesn't mean that you can't have a successful marriage from a young age, or that you can't grow with your partner, but that if you were to be out on the dating market again, it's like you wouldn't necessarily find that person. And I think that we've also talked about, similar to that, what you're looking for when you're, say, 35 is going to be different than 25. At 25, you might just be looking for someone to have fun with. Whereas at 35, like maybe you want kids and you're like, I'm looking for a good life partner. I'm looking for someone who just makes me feel, secure, who I feel like I really get along with, that I could build a home with, that I could, settle down with. And yeah, so it's like even just setting expectations and creating benchmarks for ourselves, it's sort of
arbitrary.
Yeah, because we're going to be constantly changing. Yeah. And then the relationships that we're in are going to be changing.
Yeah, so I would say if there's anyone listening who happens to be someone who hasn't had a serious relationship yet, or is like putting weight on that kind of a benchmark like I did, even if you are in a relationship and you're like putting a benchmark on like when you'll say I love you or when you'll get engaged or something like that, I think it's important to remember that you can't control how you'll actually feel when you reach the benchmark.
Yeah.
So you could think that it's gonna be the best thing in the world for you, and it's very possible that it won't feel that good.
Yeah.
So
or vice versa, yeah.
Yeah, so I would say the lesson kind of is like try not to put so much weight on those things. Like I wish that I could go back and tell myself like it's okay that you haven't had a boyfriend yet. It's okay if it takes more time. Like it doesn't have to be this weighty goal.
I think no one could have told you that, because I know that I told you that.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
but no one, including yourself, could have told you that. It took the experience for you to know that.
That's true.
Because like people definitely told you that, and you were like, yeah, but you've been in a relationship, so what do you know?
I know. It's really hard.
But I get that. I always said that I resonated with you. The thing, why did I just like lose my shit? The thing is, when you met me, when we became really close friends, I was already in my new relationship. But I remember being like, Marissa, I wish you could understand how hard I resonate with this, because like this is coming from like the girl who like never got kissed, you know, like went alone to senior prom, didn't have a relationship, didn't like, never even felt close to one. Like I always thought like it's always destined to just like end right before the actual relationship part. And I couldn't have resonated with what you were feeling more about like the pressure that you put on yourself. But when you looked at me, you were like, yeah, but look at you, you're in a relationship. And so you couldn't hear me or you could hear me, but you couldn't listen.
Yeah.
But yeah, but everything that you said about that pressure that you put on yourself, I absolutely felt that before I met my ex.
Yeah, I guess I would say like it's impossible not to feel that pressure, but I would try not to let it influence the way you feel about a person. Because like looking back, like I said, I really wish that I was able to give an answer about whether he was the right person or not. But there were too many other pressures clouding it.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even really focus on who he was as a person. And I think that if I had been more able to really hone in on who he was and how I felt with him point blank, it would have given me at least more clarity.
Yeah, I guess that's why I asked you that question. And I was having a hard time phrasing it, but I asked you like, was it the person?
Yeah.
Was it the timing? Like, do you feel like you have answers on that now that you're removed from it? Because like at the time you were just so happy to be checking boxes. And so I remember even at the time being like, do you feel like you're just excited because it's this new relationship, or like, are you excited about him, the person?
Right.
And that's a hard question, because our emotions are so all wrapped up. You're all wrapped up in it, and it's like, what is making you so excited? You kind of don't know. It's like, is it because you think that you're doing something that you're supposed to be doing, or because you just found like the love of your life? Who knows?
I wish, listening back to that voice memo, that would have been like that I did meet the love of my life, and I could
this could be a cute story.
Yeah, that I could hear that and be like, oh, how lovely. Like, I'll have to show him that voice clip and show him how excited I was. I don't know why I got British, but
yeah, I mean, I get that, because even like as we're sitting here and I'm recounting to you like, oh yeah, like this is how I met my ex, and you're like, wow, that's so crazy that he, you know, flew here and that you met your friends and your family, and I'm like, yeah, like it would be nice to, you know, say that like, yeah, I should text him and thank him for that, or like I should remind him how cool that was, but like we don't talk. Yeah, I mean, exes are another subject. Looking back at relationships and what you've sort of learned from them and what you've taken into new relationships is another subject. I feel like I learned so much from going through my first relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning things. I was actually telling a friend the other day that, you know, I'm now like a year and a half removed from that relationship, or a little more than a year and a half. And I still sometimes like learn things where I'm like, something's bothering me. And I'm like, why is this bothering me so much? And then I'm like, oh, this is
residual.
Yeah. This YouTuber I watch said that her therapist one time told her, if it's hysterical, it's historical, meaning that if it's something that really incites a response from you, like for some reason it makes you really angry, it makes you really sad, or like if you have any sort of like hysterical reaction to it, it's because it's happened to you before and you felt that feeling before. And I think that that's something that's resonated with me on the subject of relationships is I've realized that I've had like sort of an inherent response to something, good or bad, and been like, why is that getting that response from me? And then I'm like, oh, I've been here before. And it's not always like romantic relationships. It's like sometimes I've realized like, oh, that is bothering me because of the way someone treated me like years back, like a friendship or a family member or something like that. And I get that that's also another subject.
Oh,
but I guess what I was just trying to say is that I learned so much from that relationship, and that I'm still learning things just because I'm realizing that I have certain responses these days to things that I'm like, oh, I've been there before. And like, that's something I learned in my last relationship. And it's cool. It's cool to have that experience under my belt. And whether you always know it or not, you now have your experience under your belt. It's going to make you better in the next relationship. Boys, if you're listening.
Oh my god!
Should I look up? I'm gonna look up after this what percentage of our demographic is men.
I don't think it's very high.
It's like exclusively my brother.
Oh my god! I've thought about making a TikTok and just being like, "Hello, this is me. If you live in the Boston area and you'd like to hit me up here, just say I, and I'll throw you a DM and we can talk."
This sounds seedy as hell.
Yeah, it does. Well,
who are you trying to bring over to the apartment?
Like, I'm practicing social distancing. I would not bring them to the apartment. But I feel like I'm so like bored of the apps now that I'm. You want
to try your own method?
What about TikTok? Yeah, well, because like that's coming from me thinking guys on TikTok are cute. Like I watch a lot of TikToks and I'll be like, wow, that guy's cute. I wish I knew like where he was from, because like
I wish I knew his address.
I wish I knew his address and social security number. But no, I was just like, wouldn't it be interesting if because I just tend to feel like if I put myself out there, no one would really like bite. But I'm like, TikTok is a place where I feel like I could do that and I wouldn't be that embarrassed if no one.
Yeah, because people would be like, people would either take it seriously and be like, hell yeah, or they'd be like, oh, it's a joke.
Yeah, and also no matter what happens, I mean, I'm screwing myself here by saying this on the podcast, but I was going to say, no matter what happens, it's not like Instagram where like all my friends are following me. Like only a few people follow me on TikTok, but again, I'm screwing this whole plan by announcing this on the podcast.
I love that you've thought about this. It's true. Marissa, every day after work, she sits in her room and giggles to herself for like an hour, and it's because she's watching TikTok.
I love short form comedy, and I love to giggle.
Well, you said that it's like your new way of unwinding from work. It's like your new way of bridging the gap between like work life and home life when everything is home life.
Yep. Because
you're like, I have to mentally unwind instead of like physically doing the commute home.
I don't let myself watch TikToks like during the workday because that's work time. But then when work is over, I throw on the TikToks and I know it's playtime, not work time.
Here's the thing though. I'm still at work for an hour after you and all I hear is you giggling.
Helps you ease into your.
So I'm like trying to publish an article and Marissa's like in her room. And I'm like, I guess it's playtime for Marissa. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I love TikTok, you guys.
We are done with this episode. Can you believe it?
Yes.
You guys, I feel like this was really rambly and I don't really know what we knew that we wanted to talk about relationships, and there's so much to unpack when it comes to relationships that we were like, let's just ease in by like starting off explaining that a commonality between us is that neither one of us had relationships until later in the game, that we both felt insecure about that, and then we eventually got a relationship.
Well,
so we wanted to introduce you to our first bouts with love.
Yeah, I feel like when in doubt, I always go chronological.
Yes.
Like if I'm like, I feel like we should talk about relationships, but I don't know what in that huge umbrella to talk about. I'm like, well, what was my first one? Like,
yeah. Where did it all begin? Well, it all began with no one wanting to talk to us in high school. Yeah. So then we became late bloomers. And then we met some boys.
Yeah. But I feel like we're saying, there are so many more things we could talk about under this umbrella. So if anyone has any like specific topics within relationships, we've talked before about like speaking about the ghosting aspect, or maybe like just the apps, like experiences on the apps in general. So there are like tons of different branches we could go into, but if any of you are like excited or interested about any particular ones, then please tell us.
Let us know what you want us to talk about. Let us know what this episode brought up for you in terms of questions. What do you want to know?
Yeah, and let me know if I should make a TikTok to attract men. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you for tuning in.
Serious inquiries only.
We thought that the last episode was really like rambly and like weird, and like
we blamed it on the wine last time.
We blamed it on the wine, but it's not even dark out, and we're both sipping on water. The thing is, when I listened to that episode back, I think it was like pretty succinct and pretty fine. This, on the other hand,
you know what it might be? It might be like feeling relaxed on the couches.
Yeah, I think we're a little too relaxed.
Because last time and this time were the only times thus far that we've recorded just like very casually sitting down on the couch.
Yeah.
So maybe it's that. Like maybe it's like we very physically feel comfortable, so we're not really like being serious about it.
Let us know if you think that we should stop sitting on the couch and should start like before we were sitting on the floor. So we were very like, yeah, because that meant like all business, you know.
Yeah, let us know if we should be all business.
Yeah. It's like, never mind, I need to stop. At some point we have to cut this off. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Outro music. Go. Bye.